So I might have found the best bang for your buck webcam on the market. What's up everybody, Corey with Freaky Tech Reviews here, and today we're diving into the Tiny 2 Lite, which is a brand new release from OBSBOT that promises some pretty big things. So let's check it out. Quick disclaimer that OBSBOT did send this camera out for review, however they have zero say on my thoughts on it. Right out of the box, you're getting the webcam itself, which is a clean, minimalistic design that feels sturdy and well made. There's also a magnetic mount that's perfect for very quickly setting up on your monitor, a USB-C cable for fast connectivity, and a simple user guide to get you started. And you may remember OBSBOT from the Meet 2 that I reviewed a few months ago. They specialize in AI-powered webcams. I recently reviewed that Meet 2, which released earlier this year, and while it was a fantastic camera, I'm really excited about the Tiny 2 Lite today because it's built on its own little gimbal. The first one looked kind of like a GoPro actually, so anytime it needed to move, it was actually moving around the sensor, whereas this camera actually physically moves on its own little gimbal mount. Now diving into the Tiny 2 Lite's specs, it can record up to 4K or 3840 by 2160p in 30 frames per second. However, if you do 1080p, you can actually reach 60 FPS. It has a 1/2-inch CMOS sensor and a 1.8 aperture, which allows you to gather a ton of light to provide a very clear image. And I'll show some sample footage in just a little bit where I'm going to compare it not only to the Meet 2 that I reviewed, but also my Canon R8 so you can see how it stacks up to a DSLR camera. And I also want to showcase how it looks in a very dark room and a room that's full of light so you can see how well it works in low light settings. The overall size is pretty small, but it's probably a little too large to easily transport it with you. Overall, it measures at 1.9 inches by 1.83 inches by a height of 2.5 inches. So if you really need a high quality webcam to bring with you, it is portable, but it's really not built for that. This is not a review on the one that I already took a look at, but that would definitely be the better option if you needed one to bring with you. Now, as you can see, this webcam comes with that built-in gimbal, which is not really just for stabilization, but for tracking purposes. Unlike the Meet 2, which relies on AI to digitally pan across its sensor, the Tiny 2 Lite physically moves using the gimbal, and it's pretty good while it does that. So it means that you're getting full resolution while it's following you, and that's a much bigger change than moving around a sensor by itself. The tracking is pretty solid, but I'll show more on that just a little bit when I do some of my demos. Now, one standout feature that I really like is its sleep mode. You simply manually flip it down so that the camera lens is pointing downwards, and that's great for those very privacy conscious users. OBSBOT software does allow you to enter sleep mode via that software, but I do like being able to physically point the camera down so I know that it can't see me when I'm making suspiciously intense eye contact with my cat. Another thing that the Tiny 2 Lite has is the gesture controls, which is a pretty standout feature, and it lets you start and stop tracking or zoom in from a distance if you're not near the camera or your computer. It's not perfect yet, and I'll show some testing in a second, but in certain scenarios like presentations or fitness streams, it is pretty convenient. Now watch how well it recognizes hand signals from far away. Over here. So, not bad, right? And then zoom out. So it can easily tell how far away you are. And so because the sensor is so good and so clear, it can tell you, how many digits you have and how far away you are, because it can easily see that. And this is where I think they need to start, OBSBOT that is, needs to start improving the software so that you have more functionality and you can change more settings as you're far away. And then with that aperture, this low light performance on this camera is actually really solid. It makes it a fantastic option for streamers or creators who are working in dim environments. And for those who like to fine tune their setup, the depth of customization available through OBSBOT's app is a huge advantage. I said it in the last video, I love OBSBOT's software because you can control so many aspects of your webcams. And in addition to be able to change all these camera settings, being able to pair these OBSBOT cameras with things like the Elgato Stream Deck for control makes it even more efficient to use. Now let's dive into how the Tiny Lite 2 actually looks and functions, and then I'll also do some comparisons with the Meet 2 and my DSLR Canon R8. Okay, so now you can see that I have all three of my cameras that I'm using with the Tiny 2 Lite, the Meet 2, and the Canon DSLR R8. Obviously, the Canon camera blows the other two out of the water, but the point of this is not to say, look how much better the Canon camera is. It is to say that if you are a content creator looking at getting a full camera for a webcam, do you need it that badly? Now, Think about this. A lot of times whenever you're streaming and you have a smaller image of yourself as a content creator, you don't really need to have super high resolution, right? So if you can do 4K 30 on a 1/2" CMOS sensor like the Tiny Lite 2, and then just have it zoom in on your face like this, you can actually get pretty good quality. It's not going to have quite the same depth of field, but you still have the ability to blur things in the background, make it look like you have bokeh. Let me actually turn off this overhead light so you can see how it looks in really low light settings. So, okay, so there you can actually see, yeah, it definitely needs a little bit of help. Let's try some other lighting. I'll get this one on the ceiling here. It's a little too much. This is not very important to the review of this camera. I just wanted to showcase a real life example of what you can expect between the three. So let's zoom back out. So now that you've had a chance to see me actually use the Tiny Lite Me 2, let's dive into the pros and cons section. Starting off with the pros, the follow mode is incredible, especially with that gimbal-like design. It really can follow you anywhere that you're walking around the room. And like I said, unlike the Me 2, this delivers higher resolution while moving, so it handles that lower light remarkably well. This is very useful if you're doing a live stream and like to move around a lot so that it prevents your audience from missing anything. The next thing I like about this webcam are the gesture controls. Having the camera follow you around is great, but being able to control it from a distance with no remote is really, really nice. Now, OBSBOT does have a remote that you can purchase separately. They did not send that to me to also include in the review, so I'm just using hand gestures. And while this is a pro for me, I do think there is a lot of room to improve these features with additional hand controls. It's pretty limited right now, but what they have so far is a pretty solid start. But because it has such a clear image and sensor, I do think that there's room to add hand signals with fingers that allow you to do things like switch between horizontal and vertical mode or upper and lower body mode and other settings like that, because it should be clear enough that the camera can actually distinguish between your fingers, so it could like tell what shape your hand is making. So hopefully they'll expand that in the software in the future. And then the last thing is actually not the camera itself, and I did say this in the last video, but the customization that you can get through the OBSBOT software is just really game-changing and fantastic. It gives you full control over the video output, and I think most people will probably just use the auto camera setting and let that do its job, but just having the option to customize exactly how your camera looks is great. So the camera, in addition to the OBSBOT software studio mode, gives a lot more control over how you look than I've seen in other camera setups. However, there's a lot of great things about this camera, but there's definitely some things that I would like to see some improvement on. OBSBOT cameras can be tricky to connect at first, and it borders on being almost an absolute pain, especially the Me 2. That thing is really annoying to get up and running. The way to fix it is to simply download the camera's individual latest firmware. It a lot of times does not automatically update through OBSBOT software, and you have to go directly through their links to do that, and I'll definitely link those down in the description below. But it's a pain having to do that, and sometimes the files don't download correctly, and it hasn't been the best experience from that standpoint, but I will say that the Tiny Lite 2, from a connection standpoint, gets up and running much, much faster. So while it is a simple solution to get up and running and fix, I think there's still going to be a large population of folks who consider this webcam that will get frustrated with the setup. The other con that I have was just the hand tracking needing improvement. I kind of touched on this already, but if you have low light especially, then the camera can pretty easily lose your hand and it doesn't follow you as fast. Now, this is what it should be doing. So you hold that up. For some reason it's like, this is some of the weird funky stuff you kind of have with the OBSBOT stuff. It works great when it's working, but sometimes it just struggles. And sometimes if you move your face too quick or you stand up or sit down too quickly, it can also lose you as well. So as the AI powered software improves, I do think that this functionality will also, but as of right now, it definitely needs some upgrades. And like I said earlier, with the hand gestures, I would love to see more controls for switching tracking modes without needing the app or remote. The Tiny 2 Lite markets itself on the ability to be far away and hands-free, but the ability to control it from a distance is too limited to really sell it as much as it does, so they have to work on this. Overall, the Tiny Lite 2 is a really awesome webcam with some great quality and features. The tracking, low light performance, and customization options make it a really solid choice for streamers, content creators, or anyone looking to up their webcam game. While there are a ton of improvements for hand tracking connectivity, these are some minor hurdles compared to what the camera actually delivers. And then for the price of the Tiny Lite 2, it comes in about $180, but I quite often see it on sale even for a new release as low as $160, which For a webcam, for what you're getting between the camera itself and the software, this is a really hard one to beat, and that's why I called it the best bang for your buck webcam on the market. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What webcams are you using, or do you have experience with OBSBOT cameras? I would love to hear what you have to say. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and join the Freaky Tech family. I'd love for you to be a part of this tremendous growth that we're going through right now. But thank you so much for spending some of your day with me. Again, I'm Corey with Freaky Tech Reviews. I'll see you next time. So real quick before you go, YouTube thinks that you might like this video or this video, so if you want to keep exploring the channel, then be sure to check those out. Have a good one.